If the war to resist US aggression and aid Korea was the war that established the nation, then the current trade war can be regarded as a war for becoming a strong power. Once we win this war, the major external obstacles on the path to the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation will be completely cleared away. From a strategic perspective, China has been quietly preparing for this trade war for more than a decade. The Belt and Road Initiative has closely connected China with countries along the routes, opening up vast markets and cooperation spaces. The Made in China 2025 plan is committed to promoting China's manufacturing industry to move towards the high-end and enhancing its core competitiveness. These are crucial steps in our careful layout. Although we have been preparing for such a long time, we have always been cautious and always want to be more fully prepared. Therefore, China is by no means the one to initiate trouble. Preparing for war is actually for the sake of avoiding war. We strive to use our strong strength and full preparation to make conflicts disappear invisibly. In fact, the path China has taken is very similar to the 9-character strategy of build high walls, store up provisions, and delay proclaiming oneself king that Zhu Shun proposed to Zhu Yuanzhang back then. By building high walls, China vigorously develops national defense technology, firmly building a solid barrier for national security and development. Through storing up provisions, China continuously accumulates in terms of economy, resources, etc., enhancing its comprehensive national strength. After years of efforts, China has achieved remarkable results in these two aspects. However, delaying proclaiming oneself king is the most difficult. In order to delay proclaiming oneself king, we have endured a lot of misunderstandings. Even some of our own people accuse us of being weak and not being enterprising. Take the Taiwan issue as an example. One of the important reasons for its long-standing unsolved situation is to take the overall situation into account and wait for the best opportunity. But this has made us bear a lot of unwarranted criticism. However, it should be clear that delaying proclaiming oneself king does not mean not proclaiming oneself king. When to take action needs to comprehensively consider our own strength and historical opportunities. When it comes to this, we have to mention Trump. Why do we say he is like a top-level underground party member? He defiantly launched a trade war, which is simply pushing us towards the position of a dominant power. Isn't this a great assist? On April 2nd, Trump carried out his simple, crude, and unreasonable operation, imposing tariffs on the whole world. All of a sudden, the world economic order was thrown into chaos. The global stock markets plummeted instantly, showing a dismal green color, just like the color of Shanxi City in Hebei province. A global economic disaster seemed about to strike. Under the rampant high pressure of US hegemony, numerous small and medium-sized countries around the world were filled with anger but dared not speak out. They desperately needed a powerful force to stand up and check and balance the United States. At a critical moment, China was the first to step forward and firmly and forcefully say no to the United States. China's act of standing up at this time had the full advantage of favorable timing, geographical location, and human harmony. This action of China not only forcefully defended its own interests, but also, like a powerful punch, severely hit US hegemonism, making them understand that the world is not a place where they can bully others at will. From a more macroscopic perspective, objectively, we have also made great contributions to maintaining the world economic order and safeguarding the interests of all mankind. Precisely because of this, China's counter-attack has won widespread acclaim globally. On foreign websites, an unprecedented and strange scene emerged. Many people rushed to stand on China's side. We, who were always fighting alone in the past, felt that this scene was almost unreal when we saw it. But the fact was right in front of us, beyond doubt. Even many people in Taiwan province began to praise the Chinese mainland. Previously in the United States, anti-China remarks were overwhelming. But now the situation has taken a big turn. More than half of the people support us, and many former anti-China elements have also changed their stance. Let's talk about the BBC. This media has always had a notorious reputation. It's extremely bad, but it's not stupid. It just takes money from others and does things for them. After the efficiency department of Musk ran out of funds, the BBC suddenly seemed to have changed. It began to report on China objectively, without its previous sarcasm and the disgusting negative filter. From praising Xinjiang to highly praising Neza to affirming made in China and commending Huawei's 5G technology, some people joked that this was the BBC's salary demanding action, meaning that if you don't give me funds, I will praise your opponent. After Trump launched the tariff war, the BBC kept demanding salary. It published an article saying that China had numerous means to counter Trump's tariffs and did not need to yield to Trump. It has to be said that in this regard, the BBC understands the Chinese people better than the Trump team. The BBC even said a moving sentence when the spokesperson of the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs mentions the image of Mao Zedong. It shows that China is serious. In recent days, countries have queued up to visit China. The French Foreign Minister, the Spanish Prime Minister, the British Trade Minister, and the Chief of the Defense Staff, the Brazilian Minister of Mines and Energy have all set foot on Chinese soil one after another. The President of the European Commission and the President of the European Council also plan to visit China, and they even moved the EU summit to China for the first time. US threats no longer work. Before the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez visited China, the United States jumped out to threaten. US Treasury Secretary Bessent publicly said harsh words, saying that if Spain got close to China, it would be like cutting its own throat and courting death. But Sanchez didn't buy it at all. He still visited China with a high profile and said that he wanted to establish closer trade relations with China and called on the EU to change its stance towards China. After his visit to China, the two sides signed an action plan to strengthen the comprehensive strategic partnership. The EU's diplomacy towards China has also undergone a major change. Europeans began to reflect on the policies of outsourcing and risk of the supply chain during the Biden administration and are thinking about rebuilding a free trade order that is not completely dominated by the United States. Now there is a saying in Europe that the G6, the G8 without the United States, and Russia intends to come to China to explore whether a new free trade agreement can be reached to reduce trade imbalances and those unreasonable subsidies. China-EU relations have ushered in a new turning point. On April 10th, a spokesperson for the European Commission said that the EU and China had agreed to study setting a minimum price for Chinese-made electric vehicles to cancel the tariffs imposed by the EU in 2024. For example, the selling price of the BYD Qin Plus in the EU should not be lower than €25,000, which is about 210,000 yuan. In this way, not only the European local auto industry is protected, but also Chinese automakers can earn more money. This is a win-win situation. Argentina's Milei, known as the wise man of Argentina, is not confused. The United States coerced and lured Argentina to give up the China-Argentina currency swap agreement. Otherwise, it would not get the IMF loan. For this reason, Trump even planned to send US Treasury Secretary Bessent on a trip. But before Bessent set off, Argentina resolutely renewed the China-Argentina currency swap agreement, not taking US threats seriously at all and not giving the United States any face. Many countries, although they have not publicly expressed their support for China, are actually giving the United States face. In their hearts, they are all hoping that China will win. Otherwise, they would not be able to obtain the 90-day exemption period. As I said before, most countries in the world are like fence-sitters, standing on the side of the winner. After China's counterattack, it is already very good that they can remain neutral and not stand on the US side. After all, they used to be loyal followers of the United States. Mindset is very scary. In China, there are still quite a few people who think that the United States is invincible. This idea is even more common abroad. But those with vision abroad have already noticed that the general trend of the rise of the East and the decline of the West is irresistible. Smart countries have quietly started to realign. Those that realign now may have an important position in global affairs in the future. When we achieve complete victory, almost all countries will stand on our side. The defeat of the United States is a foregone conclusion. Just 1 week after China stood up to counterattack, Trump realized that the situation was not good and quickly gave a 90-day exemption period to countries other than China. Maybe in the end, it will be directly and permanently exempted. This is a sign of backing down. On April 12th, the United States could no longer hold on in the tariff war against China and began to extensively exempt tariffs on Chinese chip-related electronic products such as mobile phones and computers. This is equivalent to announcing its complete failure in the tariff war against China. Moreover, this tariff war has brought great side effects to the United States. The United States previously vowed to promote the return of the manufacturing industry. But now, while exempting tariffs on electronic products, raw materials and electronic components are not within the exemption scope, which has instead dealt a heavy blow to the US manufacturing industry. For the United States, an even greater blow is yet to come. First of all, there is the US debt crisis. This year, $9.2 trillion of US debt is due, and $6 trillion is due in June alone. The United States now has to rob Peter to pay Paul on the one hand, and it is extremely difficult to find buyers on the other hand. It can only increase the coupon interest. Recently, the yield of US Treasury bonds has soared. Either someone is selling them on a large scale or no one is willing to take over, or both situations exist. Many people think that China is selling US Treasury bonds, but in fact, Japan is the one selling the most fiercely. As the Chinese often say, each generation has its own Shanghainling. The Japanese may say that each generation has its own Pearl Harbor. On the surface, Japan does not dare to directly resist the United States, its master, but secretly it has ill intentions. The United States takes the benefits and acts coy. Can the Japanese be happy about this? What troubles Trump the most is the difficult problem that China has set for him. Increasing taxes will inevitably trigger a new round of severe inflation in the United States. There is a solution, which is to continue to exempt, but now exemption is not only embarrassing, but also may not have a good effect because China has restricted the export of some materials. China's tricks are not just imposing reciprocal tariffs. There are other powerful auxiliary means. For example, we have adjusted the chip origin determination standard to be based on the place of origin rather than the place of packaging. This has plugged the loophole. In the past, chips produced in the United States and packaged in Taiwan, China could avoid punitive tariffs. Now, if TSMC goes to the United States to produce, the cost will double. After all, the production cost in the United States is originally twice as high as in other places. This measure has effectively prevented the United States from coercing and luring the chip industries of various countries to build factories in the United States and has also undercut the foundation of US local chip enterprises, completely shattering Trump's wishful thinking. The measure of tax, free for outbound tourists, is also very powerful. If an American spends 10,000 yuan on shopping during a trip to China, we will refund about 1,000 yuan of value-added tax, and they don't have to pay tariffs when they take the goods back. I checked the air ticket from Shanghai to Los Angeles, which is only about 3,000 to 4,000 yuan. Calculated in this way, rather than buying 10,000 yuan goods in the United States, it's really better for Americans to buy them in China. After all, US tariffs are too high. I think the overseas purchasing business from the United States to China is likely to boom. A trip to China not only allows for a free trip, but also saves 10,000 yuan. Now China has implemented a 240-hour transit visa-free policy for overseas tourists, allowing them to play in China for 10 days. After they come, they will see a China completely different from what is reported by the US media. In addition, we have improved the agricultural product traceability system and signed agreements with Brazil and Argentina. Using blockchain technology, we have established an agricultural product traceability system, including GPS information of the planting area, harvesting time, transportation route, double, random sampling, etc. Once it is found that the protein content and impurity rate of soybeans are similar to those in the Midwest of the United States, the warehouse will be immediately sealed and in-depth investigation of funds will be launched. In this way, it can effectively prevent US soybeans from being passed off as those from other origins. Musk is also in a hurry. 2 of his car models cannot be sold in China, and the cost of Chinese spare parts has more than doubled. The US domestic agriculture and manufacturing industries are facing a disastrous situation. I think the United States is about to reach its limit. In short, the tariff war defiantly launched by Trump is extremely stupid. It's like pushing a millstone naked, embarrassing itself in circles, smashing the international reputation and image of the United States to pieces. Now no one is willing to take over US Treasury bonds, and the hegemonic position of the United States is precarious. Those who still stand on the US side now need to have a lot of courage and a very thick skin, because Trump even cheats those countries that obey him and says that these countries are kneeling and licking his butt, doing whatever he asks. In this situation, if any country still submits to the United States, it will surely be laughed at and gossiped about. So, Trump's tariff war not only severely damages US hegemony, but also accidentally creates an excellent opportunity for China to enhance its international image, display its strength, and demonstrate its great power responsibility. Isn't this like forcefully putting a yellow robe on China? The tariff war launched by Trump, seemingly targeting China, is actually a two-way interaction between China and the United States and an early, launched war for China to become a strong power. China is confident and capable of achieving final victory in this trade war and striding forward towards the goal of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation.